Good evening, everybody, and welcome to an episode of BBC News of BBC Radio. I have, I guess, some of the three biggest names in NS politics with me today. I have Klaus, Mikaelson. I have Lucas Stewart.
Howdy.
I got Lucas Stewart, who throws the wildest stag parties in the region. And I have Christoph Sebastian, who is a labor leader that delivered a balanced budget somehow. So, I guess we'll go around the room here and introduce yourselves and a quick intro into your party. I did try to get a Killian in here, but a Killian is being a Killian and not especially available for things like this. So I guess Lucas, I guess you can go first.
Well, sure. Howdy, everyone. I'm pretty sure you all know me by now that I'm currently the founder and chief buck of the STAG Party, where STAG is an acronym for Statesman Toiling for Advancement and Growth, and that's what we focus on. No policy, no theatrics.
All right, Klaus.
Well, it's great to be back. Always fun to get out and do the radio programming. Uh, Everyone knows me. I'm not worried about that at all. Sinn Féin going strong and proud for, I don't know, 15, 16 years now, something like that. Maybe not quite that long, but sure as hell feels like it. And, we're here. We're servants of the region. We're proud of that. And unlike pretty much any other party in the history of the region, we're not going anywhere. So you can always stand by us.
Sinn Féin now waxes and wanes, but you guys always are always there to stand in, right?
That's right.
Okay, and then Christoph, leader of the Labour and Cooperative Party.
Yep. Hello, everyone. It's been a heck of a ride for me in the last 1.5 years or so. But now, currently, I'm the Prime Minister of this fine region, leader of the Labour and Cooperative Party, which has seen quite a resurgence in recent months. We had the pleasure to welcome some great minds into our membership. And yeah, we are trying to do our best for the people.
All right, and that's our panel for today. And of course, you all know me. I'm back. I'm your host that you all know and love to hate. By the way, again, in spite of the name of the show, for this particular show, these three are not necessarily speaking from the position of whatever office they hold, member of parliament, prime minister, or even Lucas as former prime minister. They're speaking as people with, opinions as talking heads on the news. So again, yeah, this is mostly going to be opinions beyond what is strictly fact based, such as poll results and stuff. And with that out of the way, we're going to dive right in. We got behind the UKF, which was decided, and yeah. Let's see who would be the most interested. You know what, Lucas, you're bound to have a great view on this. What's your take on behind the UKF?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure how many people saw my sort of dismissive comment in the public gallery.
That was a funny joke. That was a funny joke,
yeah,
yes.
I mean, none of this has been a surprise. How many times now have we had Pine threatening legal action, attempting legal action, not really knowing how the process works, getting himself tied into knots? Like, this is a really good moment for us to know that everything we already knew to be true is still true. And that's about all of this really brought to us, I think.
And, Richard mentioned that Pine, his suit raised some interesting questions, and if Pine had gone into that suit prepared with legal counsel, maybe some of those questions could have been answered, which may have been beneficial to the region, but he didn't. And whenever I kind of half-jokingly pressed a lawyer into representing him, which I think would have been positive for the court, because a lawyer arguing instead of Pine would have ensured that decorum was maintained and that rational argument was raised. People in the region just completely dogged on this guy, which I think is completely unacceptable. I don't know what you guys think, but Klaus.
Well, I mean, I think as far as the lawsuit goes, everyone knew how it was going to go. I think we've had a couple of court cases or court applications lately where from the start it was pretty obvious it was going to go one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And rightfully so. It went the correct decision. This was nothing but a waste of the court's time, and everybody knew it from the start. I'd be shocked if Pine didn't actually know that. But much like the real life new figures he likes to mention, as people that he listens to, he had to put on a show in front and beat his chest and do all of those things that some people do. And we all knew, it was going to end in that way. So no one's surprised by that. As far as William goes in his brief stint as an attorney for Pine, I didn't see much of the quote-unquote blowback. I was told there was a couple of comments made in either the general channel or the
I think Long.
politics.
I think Long may have been the biggest one, but Long is Long. I mean, he's never. I don't think he's ever
Yeah.
true. I don't think Long is ever truly malicious, but you never know what happened in private either.
And that's true. Like, I heard about a couple of those things. I didn't see it. Who knows if he got private DMs? I don't have any idea. If there are comments towards someone for doing what they think is right, that obviously shouldn't happen. We do usually see those kinds of comments come from people that don't ever volunteer to do similar things, so it is laughable to a degree.
Right.
But I also think, if you're going to sign up to do this, then do it. Don't sign up and say, I believe this is the right thing to do, and then allow yourself to be browbeaten out of it. So, I definitely had some mixed emotions watching that unfold.
Well, ultimately, he was not allowed to even do anything anyways because they ruled without, giving him an opportunity to speak. Anyways, moving on to Christoph. What's your take?
Oh, well, it's been quite a hectic few weeks. Again, we tried in every possible way. I mean, also, as the UK have tried in every possible way to communicate to Pine, hey, this is not okay for us as an institution, and he still chose to disturb the general public's calm attitude. And while he may have reached his goal of reaching even bigger publicity than he had before, either as a positive or negative one, well, it wasn't really a really good thing to do, even for his own personal reputation, in my personal opinion, and also for the court's time, as mentioned before. So, yeah. And for the comments made in public, or may or may not have been made in private, I couldn't really comment on that.
Okay. Fair enough. Alright. So, I think we've well and truly beat that horse to death. So, moving on to, what did I say was next? By-election discussion. Alright. So, in the by-election, there were 13 responses, and Klaus asked 2 questions. Which candidates do you plan to support, and can anything change your mind between now and the voting period? So, question 1, John Lawrence Wessex from LDP, Pine Needle Project from FRW, myself from LCP, none of the above, and unsure. And Klaus, you can clarify that none of the above is also 7.7%.
Yes, for some reason, just it doesn't show. It's just a little too crowded, but none of the above, as well as John Lawrence Wessex from the Lib Dems.
And unsure are 7%.
And unsure, yes. And 7.7% for this poll was 1 vote. So those 3 all had 1 vote apiece.
Okay, and then so 61.5% was Zach Mikaelson from Labor and Cooperative, and 15.4%, which I can assume is 2 votes for Pine.
Yes.
And then, can anything change your mind between now and the voting period? No was 61.5%. Yes, 30.8%, and I'm unsure, 7.7%. We'll go in a different.
Yep, and,
I guess we'll go Christoph. What's your take on these poll results?
Well, if things would be in the live by-election as it would be here, then it's a delightful result, especially since well, some had their fears about WEC that he might have a negative impact on our in our national and interregional relations, but for the past few months, he has shown to be, in my opinion, a very good addition to citizenry and also to the government, as he has done pretty good job in the treasury, and he's constantly proving himself, and now he might finally see that pay off. So he might get personally voted in to the House of Commons, but of course we'll have to see how it goes. As for Pine, it's usually around in the ballpark of the results that he usually gets in these polls. In terms of percentage, it's sort of like 8 to 10% in live elections. And John Lawrence Wessex, well, interesting to see that he doesn't get as much votes as he used to in his heyday, but of course we'll have to see how the by-election goes. But the great thing is that the majority of the respondents have actually decided how they would want to vote. Of course, a higher voter turnout would be great for the show of democracy in this region. But if this is if this would be a representative poll, that would be a pretty good result on a personal and on a party level as well.
For a strictly MP by-election, what is our usual turnout in your experience?
It's a bit lower than general elections. General elections usually go at like 50 to 60%, mostly, and I think by-elections are a good 10 to 15% below that usually. Okay. So around 40 to 45%, perhaps. So we'll see how this will this 13 responses will show in the big by-elections.
Right. All right. We'll move on to Klaus, whose party was, I think, surprised the region by not putting up a candidate. So, Klaus, go ahead.
Sometimes you do need to make the choice of, do we put up a candidate just for the sake of putting up a candidate, or is it just not worth it at this time? And sometimes that second option is your better option. We have some people who we think would make great candidates right now, but they're busy elsewhere. They've got numerous positions. They've got maybe college is just restarting, or secondary school is just getting back in. It's just not a good time for some people right now. So we came together. We had a discussion. We said, right now, it's not worth it. We don't want to put someone up who just doesn't have the time or is already in 2 or 3 or 4 positions. So I think it's an interesting result. I think we'll probably look at mid-20s to 30 people for a turnout in this by-election. I would expect John to pick up some votes. I don't think this is accurate to what he'll get. I certainly don't think he'll win, but I do think he'll get at least another
5 or
3 or
6.
4 or 5 votes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you,
Pine, maybe another 1.
do you suspect this goes to a runoff?
I doubt it. It's always possible. If there was a runoff, I think it would have to be John and Vac, but I honestly don't really see that. If John gets more than, say, 6 votes, 7 votes as a total, I'd be surprised. If Pine gets more than 4, I'd be surprised. And I think the rest either go to VAC or people just don't vote. So I really don't expect a runoff this time around. I think between those 3, it's going to go the same way that the poll indicates, just with another maybe 10 to 15 voters involved.
All right, fair enough. And Lucas, whose party also surprised people by not putting up either himself or Mark. If you have a take here.
I mean, everybody listening at home might want to peek out the window and check for flying pigs, because I'm actually going to generally agree with what Klaus has said here. Our
Already done.
as a party is that, we're going to focus on rebuilding. It's no secret that that's kind of been a priority for us. It's something that we want to do given the last general election result. And I think that generally, the region is going through some level of just election fatigue. When we look at the past couple of months, we've had a lot of by-elections just over and over again. So I think that that's going to play a role both in who's willing to stand, but also in who's going to show up to vote. Overall, I agree. I think that this result is largely going to hold. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that, not in the least election fatigue, like I say, but also UK voters tend to favor people who are showing up and putting in the work in between time and not just rolling around whenever it's time to ask for votes at an election. And, I think that there's a difference in the candidates we're being presented with in that regard, especially when you look at other positions. What have they been doing lately? What have they been doing consistently? What have they been doing well? I think that for a lot of people that choice is clear, but just a neutrality, I don't really say anything further on that front.
Fair enough.
First turnout, same thing. I think probably, we'll get 2 or 3 times as many as we got in this poll that will actually show up and vote, but I don't see a runoff in the cards.
Fair enough. All right, and then we're going to move on to the midterms with one, just one of the polls not holding weight anymore. The one over Elisha, which we'll still touch on because he's obviously not in the Commons anymore. But I guess we'll touch on Parliament first, and we'll discuss the overall result between the 2 houses as a whole. I guess at the same time. So the House of Lords and the House of Commons. Obviously, people were asked how would you rate their overall performance, and these questions were all worded the same for both overarching parties and the individuals within them. The options being very strong, no opinion, weak, and very weak. And there was a comment section below, which I'll pull from whenever they're relevant to a poll we're discussing. So let's see, Lucas, what's your take on the result that each house got overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this has been a particularly active term for Parliament, especially after one of the terms where they were maybe not quite so active. And there's just been, plain and simple, more things for Parliament to weigh in. So I think that has definitely done them a favor, but to their credit, I mean, they had more things to weigh in on, and they followed through. They've done it. So it makes sense to me that people are looking at Parliament generally in a favorable light.
Fair enough. And for people listening, the House of Lords received 30% very strong, 40% strong, so 70% in favor of their performance, 15% weak, and 15% no opinion. The Commons had 55% strong, 10% very strong, so 65% overall in favor of how they performed, 5% very weak, 25% weak, so 30% overall against. and then 5% no opinion, with a total of 20 respondents. And one person mentioned that it was one of the MPs stating that they needed to run a tighter ship. They have with regards to keeping on top of vote deadlines and the steady flow of debate, which I think that maybe not be quite so relevant now that we have a more active speaker. They said there's some cool ideas and solid debate. They just need more form and function. The Lords are, they say, unfortunately offering more solid debate, but that the Commons are marginally more active. Now the Lords more solid debate. Obviously, you have Constance St. James in there and Owen Stewart, who are both text wall masters. So I don't know if you want to tie any of those comments into what you said so far, Lucas.
Yeah, I mean, I think other than the fact that both houses are viewed generally favorable, kind of as you've alluded to, the only other thing here that's notable to me is the slight difference between the House of Lords and the House of Commons. And I think I would put that down again, yeah, to the activity of the MPs and of the Speaker. And also just, there's a way that people get into the House of Lords, and it's because they're generally well liked and respected, and they have good experience and expertise. So I mean no disrespect to the House of Lords, but I think it's very difficult to ever end up with the House of Lords that's not favorably viewed.
Fair enough. Christoph, what's your take on these two with the comments in mind?
Well, it's for sure have been quite an active session, and the high rate of good opinions on both houses is not just down to the general activity of both of the houses separately, but the heightened amount of communication between the two houses. I mean, we've had a few bills sent back and forth for an extended debate. So I think that kind of cooperation between the two parliamentary houses has served their approval rate very well. Well, and regards to that specific comment that you have quoted, I would say that generally the House of Commons has always been more lax on their general language, and also on their attention to the smallest detail, and that's not in a negative sense, but that's just the common personality of the Commons versus the Lords. Lords are always more focused on the smallest of details, and I think that's generally a good thing. That's why it's sort of works out in the real life UK, and that's why it more works out here as well.
Fair enough. Klaus.
Yeah, I think with that comment, it does need to come down to what was happening when the speaker was absent and the deputy speaker was just kind of thrown into things. A lot's changed since that time. I think as far as kind of running a tighter ship, that's definitely come together since that change. I was pleasantly surprised with how some of the MPs were rated. Obviously we knew Alicia was going to have
Rough
the
time.
lowest ranking just based on what had happened. And I also was really looking at the ratings for William, and
Which we'll get to.
where he had 50% marked as either weak or very weak. And I think that comes down to he's been a little non-committal on stuff.
Kind of wishy-washy.
He's abstained on a few things. And I think that's just kind of like people are looking at that being like, buddy, what are you doing? So I think that's, that really just boils down to that. But everyone else, I think, had, strong ratings overall. I think people respect the group that's in there. The comments can be a little looser. We don't need to be super formal. That can hold things up more than anything else. And anytime you have someone like me and a Killian or me and Lucas in a session together, there are gonna be times where you're like, all right, come on, you bastard, let's go. So you are gonna have some of those looser moments there.
Right. And we're not going to talk about every individual MP's results. Like we probably won't talk much about probably Elisha or even you, Klaus, and probably not a Killian either, because all three. I think you and a Killian, all you got to do is toss your hat in the ring and you're there. And then Elisha just got absolutely destroyed. Only one person voted him favorably, and I'm pretty sure that was him. So. But yeah, so we'll dive into the individual MPs, and we'll start with the speaker, ma'am. And I'm not going to try the last name. With 85% voting in favor, 5% saying very weak, and then 10% not having an opinion. And we'll start with I guess with the non-MP. I guess the non-MP Lucas here can lead off each debate here, or each debate here. Lucas.
Sure, I'm happy to take a stab at it. I mean, I think Mayhem has probably been, by far, at least in my personal view, the standout of this term. And the results here seem to reflect that. To say nothing of the really just exceptional weekly report from her office. Mayhem is just one of those people where it seems like not just in political positions occupied, but in her role within the community. I don't think that anybody I've ever seen has had a problem with Mayhem. And so I think that not only the actual good work that she's doing as an MP here is showing through, but also the fact that even if she takes the position that somebody might personally disagree with, they're still going to have total respect for her. And they're going to have just the utmost good faith that she's doing it because it's what she believes is right. So I'm not surprised at this at all. My only thing here is who the heck voted very weak? That person has to be a troll or something. Like I just can't even believe that's there.
I blame Klaus personally, but I largely agree with Lucas here. Which again, considering we were both in a courtroom on opposite sides, again, look out for flying pigs. I personally, even though we're in the same party, I personally disagree with some of what she has done. Like the institution of the stock exchange. Personally, I don't think the region will support it. I think it would be dead before Thanksgiving here in the United States, and it is November. So, and that's in November, and we're in September. So, but overall, she's a very respectable MP, highly active. Definitely does a great job as speaker. And yeah, whenever she's just hanging out in general chat or talking about stuff in regional politics or whatever, I mean, somebody says they don't like her, they must be drinking because I don't know what else you need from her. Anyways, I guess Klaus.
Yeah, I think whomever selected week, I think it's likely a personal thing more than anything else. Or they're basing it off of who knows what, but certainly not the activity within the House of Commons. So I don't think there's much to be said as far as that goes. You have to expect going into these that you're going to have those. If we do a poll where it's rate this person on a scale of 1 to 10, you can usually throw out the 1s and the 10s because it's people either biased one way or the other towards that person. So that's kind of a similar thing here. I think that can really just be chalked up to some kind of a personal issue. Because if there was an actual issue, there is a comment section where someone could have said, this is my problem with her, this is my problem with these members.
They didn't do that.
No one's gonna do that. The people that like to rate public figures poorly only do so when they have a guarantee of anonymity because they wouldn't dare say something and actually have to back that up with any kind of supporting documentation or evidence. These people don't have the balls for that. So I don't think there's much to be seen or much to look at with that vote.
Plot twist, it was Mayhem herself. She is disappointed in herself. Yes.
She could do better.
Yes.
True perfectionist.
Yes. And we'll move on to Christoph.
Well, I am incredibly happy and excited about the work that Mayhem has done over the last few months, or 1 or 2 months. I've actually have not had the chance to work with her before. She left before I joined, but now that she has returned, we have been working together and debating fairly good number of things. So she has been very active and a very good partner in both inside the party and in parliament. And I'm very glad that we could work together, and also that she is doing a very good job, in my opinion, as Speaker of the House. We have been always on time with votes, and more generally, we have a structure now on how we work. So yeah.
All right, fair enough. And so for the next two, Klaus and Elisha, I'll rattle off the results, but we won't dive too far into them. Klaus, 65% overall in favor of his performance, 15% against. And that's because Klaus rubs people the wrong way, I think, sometimes. And then 20% no opinion. I'm pretty sure we had the same 1 or 2 people vote no opinion straight through in each poll, which is to be expected. And then for Elisha, he had 85% vote unfavorably, which just comes down to the fact that he douched out on us for 3 weeks and then came back and said something in Discord like 5 minutes after the vote ended, which I thought was odd. But and so we'll move on to Christoph, or not Christoph. We'll move on to Richard here, who had 65% vote in favor of him, 15% against, with 20% no opinion. Does that math right? Pretty sure that math's right. Yeah, so again, Lucas, the non-MPs currently will lead off the discussion on the MPs, and then we'll move on to the MPs themselves. So, yeah, Lucas, you want to take a stab at Richard's performance?
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, I think it definitely makes sense that Richard is viewed favorably. He's the most recently elected MP, so I think that he sort of has at least the most recent mandate of anybody in the Commons. But also, yeah, kind of the same thing that is helping Mayhem here and helping, just a lot of candidates in a lot of positions across a lot of different poll results. This is somebody who's been putting in the work for a while now. He didn't just show up and immediately ran for office. He built those connections. He really developed his reputation in the community. He's engaged with a lot of people. So I think that not only are his positions that he takes generally favorable to the wider electorate, but even if they aren't, he himself is personally favorable.
Yeah, he's always, solid to chat with in any of the various chats in Discord that he participates in, general chat, legal, or regional politics. He and I have served in Parliament together before. He and I have known each other quite a long time, just like he's known Klaus for a while, even if Klaus has the memory of a chicken. Overall, he's been a solid MP, and I don't know that he's been super big on introducing stuff on his own merit, but he definitely adds to the debate in a very positive way. And I guess Christoph can go.
Well, I personally also have a very positive opinion on Richard's work, because he has taken some interesting stances here and there on specific bills like the SEC Act. He has been a very strong advocate of reintroducing the stock market into our economy, because he believes, I think, from what I've read in various chats, that if there is even a slight interest in it, then we should have a pathway for it, which I think is an interesting view. Not that I would 100% share all of the time, but it's always good that we have some members who are always advocating for more complexity and more elements into our system. So and that also generally shows how different our opinions could be in the party on some issues, but generally we stick together pretty well. So I'm really happy of the work that LabCo MPs are doing.
All right, and then Klaus.
Yeah, again, nothing really negative to say about Richard so far. He's come in, he's done the job. It was nice to see him return to the region. Hopefully, he sticks around. He adds some nice activity both in and out of the chamber, and what's more to be said beyond that? He's doing his job. He's doing good, and to the region. That's all I can ask of anyone.
Fair enough. And then again for Achillean, we're not gonna, I guess, dive too far into why he performed well in the polls. He is Achillean. That is enough said, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. But he received 75% overall in favor, 15%, yeah, against, and 10% with no opinion. And so we'll move on to Christoph, who had 55% in favor, 25% against, did not vote him favorably, and then 20% no opinion. So, yeah, Lucas again.
I mean, I think it's always interesting whenever you have a prime minister who's serving simultaneously as a member of parliament. And I do think that also affects the results. So when I look at Christoph, where he's kind of like sitting right next to me right now, but I would say this is generally a middle of the ground result here. Honestly, I think that he has nothing to worry about. This seems like, it's not great, but it is certainly not a bad result. And, if I'm recalling correctly what results have looked like previously whenever Christoph has been a member of the chamber, I almost think that being prime minister might be a limiting factor on here. He's got other priorities, he's got other things to focus on. And so I think that, at least from my view, he probably hasn't taken on quite as much of a leading role in the chamber this term, but I don't think anybody will fault him for that.
Yeah, I think what maybe some people with limited experience in either the chamber or in the government is that oftentimes when you see a PM who also sits in as an MP, they're doing it just so that they can vote on their own stuff a lot of times. I don't know, maybe Lucas disagrees with me there, but when they're also PM, the chamber is definitely not their number one priority. Their number one priority is running the government. And they poke into the chamber whenever they have a second. And that's nothing to say against Christoph. That's just the reality of that situation. And the reason.
Absolutely, and I think.
Go ahead.
To your point, it wasn't all that long ago that we actually did change the law so that every prime minister has the right to participate in debates, even if they aren't a sitting member of the chamber. The voting power is always going to be the thing that makes the difference, but whether it's that they can vote on their own stuff or whether people see them as a trusted pair of hands to vote on everything else, I think it's going to come down to the person.
Yeah, and so I think if Christoph were just a member and not the prime minister, based on this performance before, he probably has a result probably more similar to Achillean or to Klaus or Mayhem, because he is trusted to be in Parliament, which is why he was put there again. So, Klaus, what's your take?
Again, nothing negative I can say about Christoph. I was glad when he ran for prime minister. I told a few people I think any previous issues were really just down to timing. Sometimes the timing just doesn't work out. So I was glad to see him, ready to try and step back in the job again. And so far, I think he's done well on both sides of that kind of government coin. So I've got nothing bad to say about the guy.
And Christoph, we're gonna, if you're not gonna be offended about it, we're gonna gloss over you and not let people stroke their own ego on this show.
I just want to say I appreciate what the other participants have said. I really try to manage my time better, and this just always gives room for improvement. So.
And then I think probably the most interesting part of this poll, which Klaus has already alluded to, is William. And, I get yelled at every time I say his last name, so I'm not going to do it. So yeah, William, we know him. 45% voted him favorably. 10% very strong. 35% strong. 50% voted unfavorably for him. 30% weak. 20% very weak. And then 5% one person, no opinion. Yeah, again, Lucas.
Yeah, so I think there's sort of two pieces of context that I can see here, which is number one, this is a huge chamber, right? We've expanded to 7 people, and when you look at the roster, we have a lot of really big names in the chamber. In fact, I'm pretty sure that William is pretty much the only person in the chamber right now who I wouldn't say is like a years-long veteran of the region. So it makes sense to me that he appears to kind of be struggling to make a splash. If I were him, I wouldn't be entirely too worried about that. It's his first term, right? Still?
Pretty sure.
Is this his first term? Yeah, this is still his first term, I believe. So he has plenty of time to learn and to improve. I do think that he holds a lot of hats in this region. I actually don't think that I know that. He does hold a lot of hats in this region. And trying to speak carefully here, but I think that William has a way of kind of finding himself connected or in the midst of various other episodes of conflict throughout the region. And so, as we kind of noted earlier, sometimes these results are going to be based off of things that are happening outside the chamber. Given the timing, it wouldn't surprise me if some people voted with that in mind. But on the whole here, I mean, I don't think this is a good result for William. I don't think that he needs to be worried. I expect if he runs for re-election, he would probably retain his seat.
Yeah, and again, so with the names that are in Parliament, right? You got Killian, Klaus, Mayhem, and Christoph. I mean, with names of that stature, the freshman, the new guy, he's going to be a backbencher, just almost by default, right? And he has taken, as Klaus alluded to, maybe some weird stances, and also he's also been very non-committal and wishy-washy. In general, I don't think the public, and Lucas, maybe you can disagree with me or not, I don't think the public likes to see their MPs abstaining, especially more than once in a term. Maybe miss a vote, sure, but voice abstention. I don't think the region generally enjoys seeing that. So he needs, I think, to get a little more confident in himself and voice his opinion, and also commit one way or the other with an I or an A.
No, I agree, and I would even go even one step further than that, which is we don't like people who are intentionally abstaining. But even then, even if he does take a position and vote one way or the other, we also don't like it if people are sitting on the back benches, maybe not discussing as much, and kind of giving those short answers that I think we've gotten used to a lot of the times in the past of no objections for me, I have no questions, looks good to me. That's not what we like people to Parliament for.
No, not at all. And Klaus, I guess since you touched on it earlier, you can go again. And again, me and Lucas touched on what you touched on. What's your take here?
Well, I would just say, I think 50% favorable, unfavorable, I think is normal for a lot of MPs. We have a lot of midterm polling where most MPs are around
50%,
50 to 60% favorable, rating. So I don't think this is bad stretch of the imagination. I just think it's when you take it in and look at the other members there, it is on the lower side. for an MP, it's honestly, I think it's fine. I think he's doing fine. Yes, he could, um, you know, be a little more committal on a couple things. It's fine when you're abstaining due to, like a conflict of interest, that kind of thing. I think everyone would expect you to abstain on something like that. Um, but if it's not a situation like that and you're just either not committing or you don't know, and it is okay to say, I don't know how I feel. But when it comes down at the end of a debate, it is expected that you do have some kind of a decision. Um, just as an elected representative, that's what you're there for. So I think he's doing just fine. I like the guy. I think he's going to continue to serve the region well, hopefully for years to come. And step at a time. That's all it is.
It's definitely not the worst first term parliament I've ever seen from an MP.
No.
There's been some rough ones. And then Christoph.
Oh yeah, as it has been said before, being a first time MP is quite a bumpy ride. It's still living in my memory quite a fresh memory when I was first elected MP, and things felt at first a bit too big for me. Like I didn't know how I should approach some bills. I was still learning the ropes of stuff, and in that regard, I have to give props to him that he's really participating well, considering he's a first-time MP, and also he's trying to introduce some bills of his own, which is another level of tackling all the insecurity in yourself and just putting it out there for all the fellow MPs to judge and debate upon. But so far, I have to agree with the others. It's not a bad result if he can get the gist of the job even more. Then I think he's going to be a pretty good parliamentarian going forward.
Hey, I mean, my first time in Parliament, I caused a constitutional crisis, or assisted in doing so. You can't mess it up worse than that, I don't think. Yeah. And I believe that wraps it up for the legislature's midterm. We're going to move on to the executive, which I'm sure Christoph is anxious to talk about. And again, the two people who aren't in the government at the cabinet level, anyways, Klaus and Lucas will lead this off, and then Christoph and I will follow them up. And again, Christoph and I think I'll gloss over our comments when it's speaking about us specifically.
Yep.
So, and I could, alright. So we'll actually start at the bottom. How would you rate the overall performance of the government? Those decimals are hard because we had 21 respondents here, not 20. 61%-ish, 62% voted either strong or very strong. 28% voted weak or very weak, and then 9.5%, 2 people voted no opinion. And I'm pretty sure 1 or 2 people voted no opinion almost the entire way through. All right, Klaus, you're gonna pretty much lead off the entire way through the government polling, by the way. So, Klaus, go ahead.
Sounds good. I think it's a decent response for the government. I think, for the most part, the government's doing some good stuff. I kind of took this point in with a couple of comments about not sure what some of the ministers are doing, or what's going on not behind the scenes, that kind of a thing. So I think that kind of ties in with some of the votes. There were the weaker votes. But I think overall, I think it's a fine performance for the government. We've seen far, far worse. So I think this is nothing but good news for the current term.
And I'll just toss out a comment there for you guys to tie into this discussion. Um, Somebody said culture and treasury are the strongest they've seen in quite some time, while home is slowly but surely picking themselves up. Foreign is by default a weak point, and they don't fault William. There doesn't seem to be many central initiatives, and they believe that that is a primus inter pares situation, which, for the rest of you, like me, who have no culture in them, um, it's like senior among equals, basically. Which personally, and you guys can tie this into it, is that Christoph's entire cabinet has like 10 times, besides William, has like 10 times more government experience than he does, which I think almost ensured a primus inter pares situation to a certain extent. And they hope to see something big coming out of 10 Downing soon. So I don't know if Klaus wants to tie that into his response.
No, not particularly. I do think it's interesting to see, some of the people in government. My only, I'll say for myself, the only thing that somewhat troubles me with this current government, with the cabinet, is that just about every member of the cabinet is also a member of the House of Commons. Um, and if the by-election goes the way that the point indicates it might, then every member of the cabinet, including the Prime Minister, will be a member of the House of Commons. And to have 5 out of 7 MPs cabinet ministers just kind of muddles the water a little bit. So I'm a little hesitant about that. You got to put in a place the people you think are best, so I can't fault anyone for that. There's just that's the only thing that gives me any hesitancy with the current government.
Fair enough. And Lucas?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the ultimate curses of being prime minister always is the role that your cabinet is going to play, because pretty much one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to put somebody into these roles that's already experienced, doesn't really need to grow anymore, and they're going to do a good job, and you're not going to catch any flack for it. Or you're going to put somebody into these roles where they're a newcomer, you're trying to develop them, and inevitably they're going to stumble, and you're going to face criticism. I don't think that that was necessarily what's playing on the mind of Prime Minister Sebastian whenever he lined up his government, but as you've noted, this is a very, very experienced cabinet. And when we look at the comments in the cabinet, that seems to be kind of the prevailing theme of the term, is sort of a decentralized government. I don't want to say like caretaker government, but I do think after the volatility of the past several months, that's people were sort of looking for something that was a little bit quieter, a little bit more stable. And by putting in all of these experienced people to run their portfolios, that's what we've got. So I think that this is not exactly a ringing endorsement of government, but it is an expression of confidence.
And Christoph?
Well, it's certainly providing some relief that after the just under 3 weeks that we have been in government, that we could receive a mostly positive response from the citizens. And first of all, when I tried to assemble the cabinet, my first one of the first thoughts that came to my mind was that after we had pretty swift changes of governments, it would be nice that we would have some ministers who are quite stable in their job responsibilities, so they know their place and they know what they have to do, and not necessarily. I wasn't necessarily feeling unsure in myself personally, but I was really trying to send out a message that, hey, this team is going to work really well. I would hope so, at least. So nothing to worry about here. And we are still trying to roll out some medium to big things. So yeah, I think we are quite on a roll, and yeah.
All right, yeah. So
Try to keep that.
personally, I think I think obviously the prime minister, as he just said, definitely, and as Lucas said, mentioning the instability of, I guess, the summer and late spring months, is that the prime minister definitely wanted to evoke a lot of confidence from the citizenry in his cabinet choices, even if one of them was me. Um, but he wanted a government that, if anything brought it down, it wasn't going to be a cabinet minister's action, right? It would have been something external, maybe even out of his control, which occasionally happens. So, again, I think that the prime minister powers that I'm going to assume is probably either Mayhem or Constance, because those are like the two people in the region who knows what that means without googling it. Probably, yeah. Just I don't know if he did it on purpose for sure, but that was definitely something that was definitely going to happen, just based on who he selected. And then we'll start at the top of the government, the prime minister, who got 50% in favor, 23% against, and 23% no opinion. I am rounding, by the way, so these numbers aren't going to math exactly right. But screenshots of these results will be below the episode for you guys to math it out yourselves, because there's a lot of decimal points because it wasn't divisible by 5, the number of respondents. And just to put it out there, there are a couple of comments concerning the Prime Minister. Not sure what some of the ministers are doing. PM slow to respond to questions and concerns. And PM is slow in responses to questions and concerns. Government ministers who aren't the Treasury need to be better at communicating their behind-the-scenes actions. And doesn't feel like His Majesty government is doing much, but maybe that's okay. And then government is adrift, barely doing anything. Treasury looks alright, though. Yeah, Klaus.
Yeah, again, nothing bad I can say about the PM right now. I think he's doing his job. He's got a good team. I think you have the same issues you always have, where there's a lot of stuff happening not necessarily on the forum or not in a public area on the forum, and that leaves people kind of wondering, what's going on. So I think if some of the cabinet officials can communicate maybe a little more regularly, I think those questions will go away. And other than that, I would just say to PM, keep plugging away.
What do you think this would? And I guess you and Lucas can both tie this into what you say. What do you think this says if he were to decide to run again about his re-election chances?
Well, I think it depends on who else is running.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's got a solid term to base a re-election campaign off of, but if he's running against, say, a Killian, that's going to be an uphill battle.
Good luck.
If he's running, if he was to run against Lucas, that would be a tough fight. So I think that would come down to who else is running more than anything else at this point, anyways.
Fair enough. Lucas, your thoughts?
I'm going to take maybe a little bit more of a negative position. I would say one of the things that's probably affecting this rating is we're coming up on the mid-term, but this actually isn't the mid-tenure for Prime Minister Sebastian, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're comparing him to what came before, we had the Reynolds-Bauheim administration, which need I say more, respectfully. We had a caretaker government that was kind of a bumpy ride. So I think that when people are making that comparison, Prime Minister Sebastian looks pretty dang good. I do think, here's where sort of those negative ratings and like non-committal ratings start to set in and matter a little bit more because I think a lot of people are probably going to, let that honeymoon period start to wear off now and start looking for a little bit more leadership. We're getting a little bit less patient with hearing that there are things happening behind the scenes or in preparation. We're coming up on that time where we're going to need to start seeing more results. The second half of the term, in my view, always goes by way faster than the first half.
It's also the most important half, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I don't think that we've really got to see the full fruits of what this administration is capable of producing yet. So while I don't think that certainly this is not a bad result for the Prime Minister. I should put that out there, right? But as to the question of re-election, it's really going to matter who else is running and what are they offering. And also, again, we've got about a month to get there. A lot can change in a month. What are even going to be the issues at that point in time? It's hard to draw a lot of solid conclusions here.
Right, and I guess I'll kind of play off a little bit of what Lucas said. And again, I believe that the second half of the term is the most important. You spent a lot of the first half, I guess, cultivating what you wanted to do, and the region will buy into. We're working on it. We're working on it. We're working on it. But then, second half, the region wants to see the results. They want to see what you had said you were working on for the first half. And so, as long as the Prime Minister can deliver on that and can deliver the results and has an initiative that the region really likes, I don't see how anybody could say at the end that this was a bad term. And again, because this was concerning Christoph, we'll gloss over Christoph. And then, so we'll move on to DPM and Home Secretary Killian Talleyrand. Now, I combined the two offices because I don't think anybody really expects much of the DPM office alone, especially if the Prime Minister is present for the entire term with no LOAs, which has happened so far, mostly. So I think this was probably more speaking to his abilities as Home Secretary, as well as who he is. And so 66% voted either strong or very strong, 23% weak or very weak, and then 2 no opinion. Klaus?
It's a Killian. I've never seen that I can remember go against him at any level. And if that ever did happen, it would have been at least a decade ago. So
Right.
I don't know what you would expect in any position. If he takes up a job, it's because he feels like he has the time to do it, and he's going. So that's what he's doing. He stepped in DPM. There's not much of a demand for in that position, so I think it's normal to have that person take up another post as well. And Killian's got a lot of experience with the home ministry, so I think that was a natural fit. He's doing what he does, and the only surprise is that he didn't get a higher favorability just by being him.
Right. Okay. Lucas.
Yeah, similarly, I think that this result is reflective of the person and maybe not so much the performance. And I'm sure that there are people who can disagree with that, but Killian is Killian, and I think his greatest asset is the fact that we all trust him. So even if we're looking at the performance of the Home Office right now, and I think most people would agree that the Home Office isn't making waves. I think what have they done this term? They've increased payments for manual recruitment. They've been taking care of the master citizenship list, although with less frequency than I know some people would prefer. We brought back the buddy system for probably the 1,000th time. I don't think that is going to give him this result of strong and very strong ratings. I know that there are a lot of people out there who are still concerned about the state of the in-game population. They're concerned about our, retention of new people coming to the forums and staying on the forums. It seems like in-game communication and activity hasn't really been that much of a priority. So, you know, I think that if it was anybody else, those things would probably be made into a much bigger deal. But because it's a Killian, we're all kind of just content to make sure that as long as the basics are getting done, we're fine.
Yeah, and I think the whole office is largely a caretaker office, right? It takes care of a lot of the back end of the citizenship process alongside the admin team, which he conveniently is both and still makes Silver do half of it. Um, right, so, I don't know. Some of the criticisms I saw on the forum of his updating of the MCL, particularly by the previous Home Secretary, who I think did it even less frequently than he has been doing it. But, yeah, I agree. The in-game nation count, it's almost like our new peak is like 700 now, whereas it used to be like 950 to 1,000. I don't know if any of you want to disagree with that, and go ahead. But I don't. That might be a little concerning because obviously there is like a set percentage that each region is going to draw from on its population, and that does limit us more. I don't care who you are. You could be Europea, you could be UK, you could be the Blackhawks. There's going to be a set number of people that you're going to have to draw from. And that's who you're going to get, and most of them are not going to join, like 98%. And so the bigger your population is, the more you will have to come to your forum and Discord server. Christoph.
Well, I was very happy when, after a pretty long debate between myself and Achillean, he finally accepted to be Home Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister. I could say, as sort of a general theme going forward, that obviously we have more to publish in the second half of the term versus the first one. So some of the things that we plan to put out might not be showing very well at the moment. The other general theme, which was, as some have pointed out in comments, some hiccups in communication. We are also actively working on providing more transparency to the people, even myself. So, but I'm pretty happy with the work that Achillean has done. We have delved into some technical stuff, and I hope we can bring it forward in the next few weeks.
Fair enough. All right, we're going to move on to, I think, one of the more interesting results, again, surrounding William as the Foreign Secretary. What is that? Let's see. I'm going to do some quick math. Yeah, it's about a 28% in favor. And then, what is that going to be? 42%, either weak or very weak. And then 28-ish had no opinion, which is 6 people. Lucas, actually, you want to lead this one off?
Sure. I mean, I think for a very long time now, the Foreign Office has sort of been the cursed portfolio of the United Kingdom, and a lot of that owes to not just any recent or semi-recent trends, but I think throughout our region's history, foreign affairs has always been something that we've kind of struggled with. And lately, it just kind of seems that we've been in a rut. I don't think that that's necessarily letting William off the hook. I think that this performance probably does have to do with, wanting to see at least more effort from him in trying to turn that ship around, engage us more with some of the few people who will have something to do with us, trying to find more people who can fit into that category. But yeah, that's kind of how I view this. Is split between his individual performance doesn't seem to be offering very much to the role, but also just the fact that this is a cursed portfolio to begin with.
Okay. Klaus?
Yeah, I think the no opinion. I think that's the full stop.
Oh,
And that's not necessarily William as foreign minister, but more just the ministry in general. There's a lot of stuff going around nation states these days.
Klaus, you're cutting out, Klaus.
Any better?
Speak again.
Oh, no.
All right, go ahead with your statement again.
All right. I think the no opinion is an accurate reflection of the foreign ministry. There's a lot of weird stuff going on around nation states these days. We just saw, a declaration from Europea about a couple of regions, and I think right now we're okay as region just kind of sitting back and watching what's going on. I don't think we need to be at the forefront of interregional affairs at the moment. So I think the no opinion vote is an accurate representation of where we are with our foreign affairs in general. And I think right now, I think that's okay. So yeah, there's of course always more to be done, and there's always more that the foreign minister can do. But I think right now, honestly, I would put our foreign affairs pretty low on our priority list. There's enough other stuff going on that we don't need to be involved in or kind of stick our noses into. We just have other priorities and other things that we can focus on right now, in my opinion.
Okay. Do you think maybe the only big news coming out of the Foreign Office was Portugal had anything to do with these results?
Not really. I mean, that's not a region we've ever really had that much to do with. I mean, yes, we swapped ambassadors, but really that's it. We've never had any events really with them for the most part. There's been a little bit of interaction, but they weren't someone we were super close with. So it certainly didn't impact how I thought of the Foreign Office and the government, but other people are more critical, but I wouldn't tie it together myself.
All right, fair enough. Christoph?
I would somewhat agree with Klaus here that some of these results are subject to the general attitude of the Foreign Office in recent times, that we couldn't have that much interaction with others. But again, as I've said before, we are trying to be as active, as proactive as we can be in this small space. We have some talks ongoing, and the Foreign Secretary will provide a report on that in the next few days, if I'm informed correctly. So, yeah, I hope to see more from the Foreign Secretary in the future.
Fair enough.
We are actively working. Yeah.
All right. And I actually don't have any comments on the Foreign Office. I would hope for some rather obvious reasons. So we'll move on to the Treasury. Go ahead.
I was actually just going to add one thing. I think I'm glad that Portugal was brought up, because I'm not sure if this is a good illustrative example, but we might remember that the Lusitanian Games actually was just happening this entire past 2 months, and pretty good response from our own Foreigners community, right? People were excited. This was a moment where we had been invited to an interregional event again. Things were looking up. Then the festival opened, and nobody from the United Kingdom really attended, because I guess we just weren't interested. Now, given Portugal was actually one of the organizers of that event, so perhaps this is all for the best, but shows the point here about this being such a low priority, right? That should have been a huge missed opportunity for the government. That should be a huge point of criticism, that we didn't make the full potential of that opportunity our own. And yet instead, the rest of us don't really care, because it's just not that important.
Just a shoulder shrug, right? So, okay. We'll move on to the Treasury, which I will again not comment on because it's concerning me. Other than I'll say, rattle off the results, 85% ish voted either strong or very strong, with the remainder voting either weak or very weak. Yeah, Lucas, if you want to lead off.
Well, needless to say, this is absolutely like a stellar result here. I think if we had to, give a reason for the people who voted weak or very weak, we always are going to have some people who, like, we could tax them a single pound every month and they would still whine and complain and say that taxes are too high, right? Mm-hmm. So looking at the budget, I mean, I feel like more or less everybody kind of got what they wanted. We got some revisions to the tax structure so that, especially for our lower earners and our newcomers, they aren't hit quite as hard. But we also balanced this long-term need for some stability and some responsibility that I think successive administrations have been working towards. So I think that really it was sort of a test here of like, is the government going to give in to the pressure and just sort of start wasting money again and sort of win people's favor? And they didn't do that. And in doing so, they won even more favor.
Right. Okay. Klaus?
Yeah, I've got nothing negative to say about the Chancellor or about the ministry. I think they are addressing what they believe needs to be addressed. I don't think anyone's getting hit hard with taxes. It's fairly proportionate from all the reports, and what more can you ask as far as that goes? They're keeping the economy going, even though right now there's just not a whole lot to do with the economy. But it's one of those things people have said they want to keep. So this government's doing what they can to keep it running, and the Chancellor, I think, has been one of the more, if not the most publicly active member of the cabinet. So, there's a reason he's polling as high as he is, or there's a number of reasons, really. So, just a good job all around, I think.
And Christoph?
Yeah, I am pretty content with the result of the Treasury. I mean, we've worked together in the previous administration as when I was Chancellor and you were Chief Secretary of the Treasury. We've had pretty good interaction then, and also the vast difference in results compared to the rest of the cabinet may come down to the fact that most of the visible work in the first few weeks has been done mainly in the Treasury, because we've had to churn out the budget in time, we've had to properly debate it in the Commons, and also the Commons have received, our Parliament has received quite a few bills relating to the economy, and the House of Commons has decided fairly often that we would call in the Chancellor to weigh in on the bill in question. So that sort of activity has also paid and turned out to be very positive for the approval rating of the Chancellor. So yeah, pretty good results. We hope to keep this up.
All right. The other thing I'll say is that I hope to have, for all of you that either pay taxes or are getting money back from your salaries that override the amount you owe, to have the tax slips done before I go back to work on Tuesday from the government holiday here in the United States. Moving on to culture, headed up by Richard Stewart, who I think in previous iterations of his existence here in the United Kingdom was always well respected in his ability to head that office. Klaus.
Oh, sorry.
All good, homie.
Don't know what just happened.
We're talking about culture. Oh,
Yeah,
which
so
I guess,
it's not bad. I mean, I don't.
which I guess,
My brain there.
which I guess I should say what the results are real quick. 30, 30 plus 23-ish. Yeah, about 61% approve of his performance, roughly 28% disapproved, and 9.5% had no opinion. So yeah, Klaus, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, it's always hard for me to comment on a culture ministry because I feel I feel like I'm usually a little more. Uh, I critique them a little bit more just because I don't usually do with the culture office. A lot of my activity tends to be based in part government, that kind of thing. I'm not someone who spends time in Red Lion or doing some of those games like that, or even
You're breaking up
so
again.
yeah, it's for me to comment on our culture ministry. As far as I know, Richard seems to be doing fine. Um, there could always be more coming out of the culture ministry. It'd be nice to see some, regional events, but as far as I can tell, he's not doing anything particularly poorly. I think it's somewhat of a middling term for culture so far.
And Lucas, I'm sure your take on this is just going to be glorious. So go ahead.
Oh man, why'd you set me up like that? I mean, first, one of the things that I think we should point out here is we discussed everybody's ratings today. Their personalities have a lot to do with it. But if you compare this rating to Richard's rating as an MP, it seems like we're a little bit more polarized. More of the people that had no opinion on his work as an MP seem to be leaning towards the weak side on Culture Secretary. But at the same time, more of the people who maybe said that he was a strong MP are willing to say out there that he's a very strong Culture Secretary. The context of the reestablishment of the Culture Office, I think, is kind of inescapable. Because there's not really an immediate comparison to be made. So the fact that he's doing things at all, I think, wins a lot of people over. If I had to give some reason to some of the people who voted weak or very weak, it kind of seems like there's not necessarily like an overall strategy. It feels like culture is sort of being split up into a lot of bits and pieces that are very reactionary. And so I've heard some people that they're like, it almost feels like the general strategy for the culture office is just that we're kind of like paying people for more activity, which works fine for a while, but then eventually everybody realizes that our money's kind of useless. So, I think kind of like we said on one of the other topics here, a lot can change in the second half of the term. Are people going to start to get tired of what the culture office is doing, as they often do? And if so, then how does that affect this rating? How is he going to keep that up?
Right. And like Klaus, I don't spend a lot of time in the Red Lion or Spam Games or Windsor or India States. But overall, and I think, and I don't know, Lucas, maybe going back to your point, is that I think the coronation probably took up a lot of his time. Right? The culture office was obviously going to be a large part of the planning of the coronation. That office is obviously a huge tool for the king and his staff to, I guess, get the public interested. And so now that that's over, I don't know, maybe he didn't have much of a plan beyond the coronation. I'm unsure. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Lucas, but overall, it's been a decent term. Go
I
ahead.
think coronations, like, on the one hand, if you're the culture secretary or just the government overall, whenever there's a major royal event happening, if you screw it up, like, your ratings go through the floor.
Rough.
On the other hand, if you do a really good job, then that will probably boost your ratings. And then on like a third mutated hand sprouting out the middle of your chest, there's also this big crowd of people where they kind of recognize that like this is a royal event, not something that you necessarily planned, but that instead you were maybe more involved in just like the execution of it. Because I do think over the years the royal family has taken more leadership in outlining exactly what they want for these big events. So, I'm sure that the coronation had some effect on this. What it actually is, I couldn't tell you.
Fair enough. Christoph?
Yeah, as it has been said before, the coronation has been a big part of what the culture office has performed in August. I think we've done a pretty decent job. Richard has been fairly active with the activities out there. Not that much visible anymore since the coronation has been moved to the archives now, of course.
Right.
But now, as it has been raised rightfully and justly, now we have to show that we have our focuses elsewhere as well, not just putting up all our stakes on this one event, because of course it's not fully a government event. It's more of a joint venture with the royal family. So the fact that we could complement that fairly well is commendable. But yeah, now we have to show that we also have other good plans in terms of culture.
And any of you can comment in response.
Overall,
Go ahead.
I think we're on a good track here.
Okay. And any of you can comment in response to what I'm about to say. But I think, so a lot of culture secretaries get a gift just from the calendar in helping them guide their term, right? Like when somebody's elected, the next prime minister, they appoint a culture secretary. Obviously, they're going to be in house they're going to be in charge for Christmas, and if they're in America, Thanksgiving too, if that's what they want to do, and the New Year even, I think, right? Or somebody's in office for Easter or Valentine's Day or the start of summer, or this or that. This term that runs from August to October doesn't have a lot of that, right? Because obviously this government will leave office just prior to Halloween, which is obviously another gimme. But then the coronation, I guess, kind of handed culture something to do. And yeah, like Christoph said, I guess it's up to culture to prove that they had something else up their sleeve besides just executing what the royal family wanted. And we do have a much more active and involved monarch now than I think the region is generally used to. Anybody disagree? No? Okay. All right. Cool. Well, I believe that wraps up everybody. We have talked about everybody, and this has been an hour and a half long episode. So yeah, I look forward to I guess Klaus post. Yeah, I don't do a lot of editing. I don't really edit anything out. I edit out background noise, and sometimes if there's like an uncomfortably long dead space, I'll edit that out too. But overall, I leave it as raw as I edit it as raw as I leave it as raw as I can. So yeah, look forward to Klaus posting up the by-election results. I don't know if he plans on putting an article with that, but yeah,
remains to be seen.
Yeah. So again, I'm sorry for the technical issues that resulted in me not being able to live stream this today, but it should be out on Saturday, September 2nd at some point, even if it's in U.S. time. So from BBC News on BBC Radio, so long, good night, and thank you for listening if you made it all this way.